Welcome back to my Haunted Medium Life. I'm your host, Steve Christian. I'm also the host of a TV show that aired locally here in Jacksonville called Local Haunts on CW17 for 10 years. And being that it's the spooky season, I have a story for you. People have asked me over the years, have I ever been scared at a paranormal investigation? The answer is no. But have I ever been scared of the paranormal? Absolutely. I grew up in a haunted house as a kid, and I was terrified of things that happened every day in my life. But the scariest thing that ever happened to me, I'm going to tell you about right now. This is without a doubt the scariest paranormal experience I ever had. And it didn't just happen once, it happened many, many times for over 25 years. But stick around to the end because it has a happy ending. Long before I met my soulmate and business partner, Pamela Theresa Medium in the Raw, back in 1987, I was a newlywed, married to somebody else, and I lived in Los Angeles, North Hollywood to be exact. Now, having had paranormal experiences my whole life, I was always interested in the paranormal, especially now that I was an adult. I was less afraid of what bothered me as a kid. So, friends of mine and I decided to do something which I now consider kind of stupid. We played with a Ouija board. I highly advise against doing that now, and here's why. Back in the fall of 1987, I lived in North Hollywood in an apartment complex, a rather small building of about 30 units, and a good friend of mine lived in the same apartment complex. And my then wife and I had a house guest, a friend of mine that I met on the set of a TV show called Rags to Riches, guy named Paul. And Paul was a big guy. He was 6'5", and he had been drafted by the Denver Broncos as a tight end. He didn't quite make the cut as on the team, but he was a big guy, a big athletic guy. Not the kind of guy who would be afraid of a lot of things. Paul and my best friend at the time, Mike, who lived in the same building, and his girlfriend, Jackie, and my wife at the time, and Paul, we decided one night to dabble with a Ouija board. So we played it with the Ouija board and had communication with the spirit world. Little did I know what I was getting myself into at the time. So as the night was over, we put the Ouija board away and we went to bed. Mike and Jackie went back to their apartment, and Paul, the house guest that we had, stayed on a rollout mattress on our living room floor. It was actually a one-bedroom apartment that we lived in at the time, and he lived in the living room for about 3-month period of time while he was getting back on his feet. And he stayed on a rollout mattress on the floor in the living room. And the night after we played with the Ouija board, I'm in bed, and I become suddenly aware of not being alone. Now, my wife was asleep next to me in bed. I'm laying in bed. I'm awake. I'm wide awake. It is very dark in the room, but I'm very aware of a presence at the foot of the bed. And it just gave me the heebie-jeebies and that prickly sensation I'd always got as a kid when paranormal stuff was about to happen. Was tingling on the back of my neck, was going crazy, and I just had this uncontrollable fear of somebody in the room. I was like terrified of what was in the room with me, and I didn't see anything at first. I did hear like something on my dresser get knocked over, which got my attention. And then this wave of fear came over me. And then I got this, the best way I could describe it was I could feel what I thought was just absolute evil in the room with me. I was convinced there was a demon in my room. Now, keep in mind, I grew up with traditional Christian values. I believed in heaven and hell and angels and demons and all that at this time in 1987. And I was convinced that a demon had come through the Ouija board and was now in my room. And I laid there terrified for what seemed like hours. It was very dark in the room, but at the foot of the bed, I could see a dark mass in the darkness. It was darker than the darkness. Does that make sense? It was standing at the foot of my bed, and it was just like staring at me. And it was like a cloaked figure in a hooded figure, like a monk would wear, and he was just staring at me, and he just stood there staring at me, and I just felt terrified. And this went on like for hours. I couldn't sleep, and my wife next to me at the time was just out, totally out. Because I was going to ask her if she could see what I was seeing, but she was out. I couldn't even wake her. Uh, I didn't try too hard. I didn't want to, alarm her, but I was like, am I just seeing this? And this went on, like I said, for hours, and it finally dissipated. I prayed really hard to make it go away, and eventually it did go away, but it took forever for this thing to leave. And the funny thing is, the following morning, I got up, and I always got up before Paul did. Paul slept in late, and he was surprisingly, when I got up in the morning uh, after a really rough night, I got up and opened the bedroom door to go into the living room, and to my surprise, Paul was sitting on the couch. The roll-up bed was gone, and he was sitting there, kind of like on the couch, just kind of like rocking back and forth and holding his hands like he was disturbed. And he looked at me and he saw me, and I startled him. And the first words out of his mouth, and I'll never forget this. This again, Paul is 6'5", big athletic guy, not somebody who'd be intimidated very easily, but he looked scared. And the first thing he said to me wasn't good morning, wasn't hi, how are you doing? It was, the devil was in here all night last night. And I was shocked. My jaw hit the ground. I'm like, I could not believe what he just said, because he didn't know what I had experienced on the other side of that wall all night long myself. And lo and behold, he was having an experience in the living room at the same time, or around the same time. And so I go, really? And he goes, yeah, it was in here. I saw it. I said, did you? He said, yeah. And I hate to say this, but I wet my bed because I was so scared. And this is a, big 6'5" big dude. He was so terrified, he literally wet the bed he was sleeping in, or not sleeping, but he was in. He said there was this dark hooded figure circling him. As he's on the floor in the living room, and the only light source was the VCR, had the clock on it. And he saw this shadowy figure walking around him, but it would literally block the clock on the VCR as it walked between him and the VCR as it was circling, and it was pointing down at him. It was circling around him, looking down at him, and pointing at him. And this went on, he said, it seemed like all night to him. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And I told him what I experienced. I said, this is unbelievable. I mean, we both experienced that the same night. I said, were you asleep? Did it wake you up? He goes, no, I had not fallen asleep yet. I was wide awake for all this, as was I. But it gets crazier. A few hours later, my friend Mike, who was a part of our Ouija session the night before, and lived in the same apartment building, he called me and he said, dude, we got to talk. And I said, what? He goes, something was in my room last night and it scared the hell out of me. So there's 3 people out of the 5 people that were participating in our Ouija session. All the men, actually, none of the women had a problem, but all the men had seen the same dark hooded figure in their room that night. But wait, there's more. This went on every night for weeks. The same dark hooded figure that we nicknamed the Mad Monk, because it looked like a monk with the hood on. And he obviously looked like he was pissed off at us. So we experienced the visitations from the Mad Monk every night for weeks. And eventually Mike's girlfriend, Jackie, did experience something too. It seems like our mates were deep asleep. My wife was deep asleep. She slept through everything. Mike's girlfriend, Jackie, slept through everything. But one night Mike and Jackie had 2 cats, and their cats were literally bouncing off the walls of his bedroom. And he had these big, heavy sliding doors for her closet. And he said they were rattling, like vibrating, and it woke up Jackie. And so she experienced that too. And she saw the cats freaking the hell out. And Mike told her there was a demon in the room that had been bothering, he knew she had heard about this mad monk. So he said, it's here and it's doing this. So she experienced that part of it. Now, this is Los Angeles, and it is prone to earthquakes, but I don't think we had an earthquake that night because I didn't feel that going on in my apartment in the same building. So I'd have to be a very localized earthquake if that was the case. Anyway, these events went on, like I said, for weeks, and eventually Paul didn't really have a place to go, but he found a place to go. He moved out. He couldn't take it anymore. We were helping him get back on his feet, and he literally found another place to move because he just couldn't handle it. He was really shook by the mad monk, and it was really shaking me up, and it affected my sleep, and it was a terrifying experience. And I experienced a lot of ghosts as a kid in a haunted house in Charleston, but this was off the charts, more intense than what I'd ever experienced. I know what people are going to say. You experienced sleep paralysis. Well, is it easier to believe that three people who have never experienced sleep paralysis in their life all started experiencing it on the same night? Or is it more believable that we were all visited by a paranormal entity that came through our Ouija board? I think I go with that. I have a hard time believing that we just all developed sleep paralysis the same night and continued to have it for weeks and weeks after the first night. The only thing that seemed to help was to pray. And I prayed hard every time he made an appearance in my room. And I only saw him a couple of times, but I would always feel him. But I only saw him the like maybe twice. But Paul and Mike saw him more frequently. Now, Mike also had a Christian background, and he too felt it was a demon that was bothering us. And Paul was Irish Catholic, so he thought it was a demon. But it turns out we were all wrong. After 3 years, I moved back to Jacksonville, Florida, where I'd come from. And so I moved from one extreme of the country to the other, I-10 all the way, 3,000 miles all the way across the country. And guess who came with me? The Mad Monk came with me. Now, he didn't come every night, but I was visited by the Mad Monk at least once a week. And like I said, it went on for 25 years. And over those years, I would share my experience with close friends that I felt I could confide in. And guess what? They too would experience a visitation from the Mad Monk. Then things changed in July of 2012. I was divorced. I met Pamela Theresa Medium in the Raw. I've talked about how we met in other videos. You can check them out on our channel. And she is a true spiritual medium. She sees and hears the dead like you see and hear me right now. She's literally in both realms. She sees earthbound spirits, which you would call ghosts. She also sees heavenly spirits. In fact, her day job is connecting people to their loved ones on the other side. Those heavenly spirits I was telling you about, people who have crossed over and gone to the next level. They're still around and they want to communicate to their loved ones here on earth, and that's her job. She makes that connection for them, bringing peace and closure to very grieving people. So when I met Pamela, she told me about my paranormal experience because A, she sees the spirit world, and B, she has a posse of heavenly travelers, as she calls them, that work with her on a daily basis all the time. And they informed her of what was happening in my life. And I validated the Mad Monk situation to her. And I told her that it wrecked my sleep. I didn't get a lot of sleep because of this. I just never could get deep into sleep because I was always afraid it was going to show up. And it had got to a point where I would literally start to feel hands on my throat when I was sleeping, or when I would wake up from a sleep with the visitation of the Mad Monk. I would feel his presence and being pushed down into the bed and feel hands on my throat. And I know you're going to say that's sleep paralysis, but like I said, I back up. Isn't it kind of far-fetched to believe that three men develop sleep paralysis the same night. Again, I say that's impossible. I'm sorry. That just doesn't add up. But this had gone on for 25 years. So Pamela, being what she is, had communication with the Mad Monk and did a read for the Mad Monk, which is what she does. She has crossed over thousands of earthbound spirits. You call them ghosts. She calls them earthbound spirits because they're just spirits who are earthbound. They have not left the earth plane yet. So they don't have full awareness. They're just us without the skin, basically. And she communicated with the Mad Monk, and she basically told him that he needed to go. He needed to go into the light and transition, because it turns out the Mad Monk wasn't a demon at all. It was an earthbound spirit. Now, the thing about earthbound spirits are, if you're a jerk when you're alive and you die and you remain in the earthbound plane, you're a bigger jerk because you get away with shit. You can get away with whatever you want. Who's going to stop you, right? So after having a conversation with the Mad Monk, she helped him realize that he needed to move on and that he could. And in fact, he did. And from that day forward, no more Mad Monk. Gone out of my life. So a haunting that lasted for 25 years, a haunting that I was convinced was a demon all those years, turned out to be a jerk earthbound spirit. And why did I feel choking sensation? Pamela told me what I was experiencing was his death process. We are all empathic to a degree. She is a freak of nature empath. That's part of her gift as a medium, is she feels the death process of the spirit that she's communicating with. They don't do it to her. She just feels it. It's part of their energy. If they had a heart attack, she feels the heart attack. If they were shot, she feels the gunshot. She's very explicit in those details when she does reads with people, and that's part of the validation process. There's no way she would know how their loved one died, but yet that information comes through in the session because of her empathic hits. That being said, the Mad Monk had experienced dying like that. He was strangled and kind of buried alive situation. He had a bad demise, put it that way. And so he wasn't necessarily doing it to me. I was empathically feeling it when he was around. Now, was he evil? No. He was very pissed off. He was in a very dark place. He was very earthbound. And if anybody who was in his presence would, like me, Mike, or Paul, would feel empathically his death experience. We would feel that fear that he felt. We would feel the hands on the throat. We would feel like we're being held down. So it wasn't sleep paralysis. It was just empathically linking to his death process. And he carried it with him like baggage. A lot of ghosts do, actually. They carry their death process with them very heavily. And so for an empath like Pamela, it's easy to tell how they died because, for one, they will often appear how they died. So say if they were in a gruesome accident, they will appear to have the injuries that they sustained in their death process. Now, when they transition and go into the light and become heavenly, they are whole again, and they don't have that baggage with them anymore. They are complete. So, like I said, thanks for sticking to the end. It was a scary story for me, and it did have a happy ending. The Mad Monk did go to heaven, as it were. He got his wings, and so he doesn't bother me anymore. Just like that, after 25 years, I couldn't get this son of a bitch to go away for anything. One day with Pamela, he was gone, just like that. Never to be seen again. Thank God he's gone. Enjoy your afterlife, dude. If you've had experiences like that, it's actually very common for people to have experiences like that. You could just be empathically feeling an earthbound spirit in your presence. It happens. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. And if you would like to have a session with Pamela Theresa, her contact information is in the description of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. And there's a lot of content of Pamela Theresa doing reads for people right here on this channel. So be sure to check that out as well. Until next time, for more My Haunted Medium Life.